Avery Collins was 45 years old when she learned that love could turn into fear without raising its voice. Not the dramatic kind of fear people imagine, not screaming in the street, not shattered glass, not doors slamming so hard the neighbors look through their curtains. No. This fear arrived at my kitchen table on a Tuesday evening, while the dishwasher hummed softly behind me and my 12-year-old daughter Mia laughed upstairs at something on her tablet. It came from the mouth of the man I had shared 14 years with. Mark Reynolds. My boyfriend. My children's father. The man who knew how I took my coffee. Who had held my hand in hospital rooms. Who used to kiss Noah's forehead when he was little and scared of thunderstorms. He said it like he was suggesting a summer camp. I've been looking into programs for Noah. I remember blinking at him. Programs? Mark didn't look ashamed. That was the first thing that disturbed me. He looked calm, prepared, almost relieved. For boys like him, he said. The air seemed to thin around me. Noah was 16. Quiet, smart, funny in that dry teenage way where half his jokes sounded like insults until you saw the corner of his mouth twitch. He had come out about a year earlier. I won't pretend I handled it perfectly at first. I loved my son more than anything, but I had been raised with certain ideas I had never been brave enough to question. When Noah told me, my first feeling was not rejection. It was panic. Panic that the world would be cruel to him. Panic that I would say the wrong thing. Panic that I had already failed him by not making him feel safe sooner. But I learned. I read. I listened. I apologized when I had to. And every single day after that, I made sure Noah knew one thing clearly. He was my son, and nothing about him made him less worthy of love. Mark did not adjust the same way. At first, he went quiet. Then he became cold. He would leave the room when Noah spoke too openly. He would say things like, "He's still young," or "Teenagers get confused," or "He needs structure." I told myself Mark needed time. That was my mistake. At the kitchen table, he folded his hands and said, "There are places that help with this." I stared at him. Help with what? With Noah. My stomach twisted. Noah is not broken. Mark's jaw tightened. You keep saying that, Avery, but you're not helping him. You're enabling him. The word felt like a slap. I lowered my voice because Mia was upstairs. What kind of program are you talking about? He hesitated for half a second, just long enough for me to know he understood exactly how bad it sounded. Then he said it. A conversion camp. For a moment, I heard nothing. Not the dishwasher, not Mia laughing, not even my own breathing. I looked at the man across from me and could not recognize him. You want to send our son away, I said slowly, because he told us the truth about who he is? Mark leaned forward. I want to save him. No, you want to change him. He's 16. He's our child. He needs help. He needs parents who love him. Mark's face hardened. Love doesn't mean letting him ruin his life. That was the first time I felt something inside me split. For years, I had imagined betrayal as another woman's perfume on a shirt, a secret message, a lie whispered in the dark. I never imagined betrayal would sound like a father calmly planning to send his son somewhere that would teach him to hate himself. I told Mark absolutely not. I told him I would never allow it. I told him those places damage children. I told him Noah deserved safety, not shame dressed up as concern. But Mark would not back down. He said I was weak. He said I was emotional. He said if I really loved Noah, I would stop feeding the confusion. I sat there, looking at him, and realized I was not arguing with a worried father. I was arguing with a man who had already made a decision in his heart and was only waiting for me to get out of the way. That night, I barely slept. I stood in the hallway outside Noah's room and listened to the faint sound of his music through the door. I remembered him at 6 years old, holding a plastic dinosaur in one hand and my sleeve in the other. I remembered him at 10, crying because another boy had called him weird. I remembered every time I had told him, "You can always come to me." Had he believed me? Or had he learned to hide pain so well that even I missed it? For 2 days, Mark and I argued in pieces, in the laundry room, in the driveway, in whispers after the kids went to bed. Every conversation ended the same way. Mark insisting Noah needed to be corrected, and me feeling more certain that the danger was no longer outside our house. It was inside. I started searching for attorneys during my lunch break. My fingers shook as I typed. Divorce, custody, emergency protection, parental rights. Each word felt unreal. I had thought about leaving Mark before, in passing, the way exhausted couples sometimes do after bad fights. But this was different. This was not about me being unhappy. This was about Noah being unsafe. The next day, I took time off work and met with a lawyer. I told her everything. She listened without flinching. When I mentioned the camp, her expression sharpened. "Do not ignore this," she said, "and do not assume he won't act." Those words followed me all the way to Noah's school. When Noah climbed into the passenger seat, he looked surprised. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I tried to smile, but it broke before it reached my eyes. "We need to talk, sweetheart." He went still. I drove to a quiet parking lot near a small park. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Noah stared out the window, his backpack hugged against his chest like armor. Finally, I said, "Your dad and I have been arguing." He gave a bitter little laugh. "Yeah, I noticed." I swallowed hard. "He told me he wants to send you to a program, a place that claims it can change you." Noah's face drained. And that was when I knew. He already knew. My voice cracked. "Noah?" He looked down at his hands. "He told me not to tell you." The guilt hit so hard, I almost couldn't breathe. "What else has he said to you?" Noah shook his head, but his eyes filled. I reached for him carefully. "Please, I need to know." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then my son, my beautiful, quiet boy, began telling me the truth I should have seen months ago. Mark had been pressuring him, telling him he was confused, telling him he needed help, telling him he was hurting the family. He had tried setting him up with girls, forcing him into awkward situations, then accusing him of being ungrateful when he refused. "I kept saying I was going to friends' houses," Noah whispered. "But sometimes I just walked around until it was late enough to come home." I covered my mouth. "I didn't want you two to fight," he said. That sentence broke me. Because children should never have to make themselves smaller to keep a house from falling apart. I pulled him into my arms, and he collapsed against me. He cried like he had been holding it in for a year. I held him tighter than I ever had. "I'm sorry," I kept saying. "I'm so sorry. I should have known." He shook his head against my shoulder. "It's not your fault," I told him. "None of this is your fault. Do you hear me? None of it." He nodded, but I could feel he didn't fully believe it yet. That was when I made my decision. I was not staying for Mia's sake. I was not staying for appearances. I was not staying because 14 years sounded too heavy to throw away. I was leaving because my son had been carrying terror under my roof, and I had mistaken silence for peace. When we pulled into the driveway, Mark's truck was already there. The house looked normal from the outside. Porch light, trimmed bushes, Mia's bike leaning near the garage. But I knew, before I opened the door, that nothing inside would ever be normal again. The second we stepped inside, I could feel tension waiting for us. It was in the silence. Not peaceful silence, the kind that hangs low and heavy, like a storm pressing against the windows before the rain breaks. The living room lamp cast a dull amber glow across the hardwood floor, and Mark was sitting in his chair watching television, with the volume too low to actually follow anything. He looked up when we entered. His eyes landed on Noah first, then on me. And immediately he knew. "You told her," he said flatly. Noah froze beside me. I stepped in front of him instinctively. "Don't you dare put this on him!" Mark muted the television. "I asked him one thing." "You ask our son to hide emotional abuse from me!" Mark stood slowly. "Oh, for God's sake, Avery, don't start exaggerating." The lawyer's business card burned inside my purse like a secret weapon. I had rehearsed calmness during the drive home. I had promised myself I would not scream, not lose control, not make things worse for the kids. But then I looked at Noah's exhausted face and remembered him admitting he wandered around town alone just to avoid his father. And something inside me snapped. "You've been terrorizing him for months!" Mark laughed once under his breath. "That's dramatic." You tried to force him into dates! I tried to help him act normal. Noah flinched. That tiny movement was enough to make my blood boil. Do not, I said carefully, talk about our son like there's something wrong with him. Mark looked at Noah with open disappointment now, no longer pretending. You don't understand how hard this is for me, he said. Noah stared at the floor. I turned toward Mark in disbelief. Hard for you? Yes, actually. His voice rose. I had dreams for him, Avery. A future. A normal life. Noah's breathing became shallow beside me. I reached back and squeezed his hand, without looking away from Mark. You think being cruel will somehow fix him? I think indulging this fantasy is ruining him. Fantasy. The word echoed in my skull. This was the same man who taught Noah how to ride a bike. The same man who cried holding him as a newborn. And now he spoke about him like a stain that needed scrubbing out. I realized then that Mark's hatred had not appeared overnight. It had been growing quietly in corners, while I convinced myself we were still a family. You need to stop, I whispered. No, Mark shot back. You need to wake up. Noah suddenly spoke, voice trembling. I didn't choose this. Mark turned toward him sharply. You absolutely did. Mark. My tone carried warning now, but he was beyond hearing me. You think life is going to be easy for you? He snapped at Noah. You think people are just going to celebrate this? Noah's eyes filled instantly. I never asked them to. Then why advertise it? I'm not advertising anything. The desperation in Noah's voice cut straight through me. He sounded so small, so tired. I moved fully between them. That's enough, Mark pointed at Noah. He's destroying this family. No, I said. You are. The room went still. Mia appeared halfway down the staircase, clutching the railing. Mom? Her frightened little voice nearly shattered me. I softened immediately. Baby, go back upstairs. But Mark was already spiraling. You turned them against me, he accused. I stared at him. You did that yourself. He slammed his hand against the wall hard enough to make Mia gasp. I am trying to save my son. No! I shouted back for the first time. You're trying to control him because you care more about your image than his happiness. Mark's face changed. That was the moment. The exact moment I realized this argument had crossed into somewhere dangerous. All the restraint disappeared from his expression. His anger stopped looking human and started looking explosive. Noah stepped forward nervously. Dad, don't call me that while acting like this. Noah recoiled like he'd been slapped. And maybe emotionally he had been. You know what? Mark barked. Everything was fine before all this. Before he started poisoning this house. My heart dropped. Poisoning. That was how he saw his own child. You need help, Mark continued, pointing at Noah. And your mother is too weak to do what's necessary. Noah's face crumpled. Stop it, I said. He needs discipline. He needs love. He needs fixing. He is not broken! The scream tore out of me before I could stop it. For a second, no one moved. Then Mark lunged forward. It happened so fast my brain could barely process it. Noah tried stepping between us, maybe to calm things down, maybe because, despite everything, he still loved his father enough to hope he would stop. Mark shoved him violently. Noah stumbled backward into the edge of the coffee table with a sickening crack. Noah! I rushed toward him, but Mark grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise instantly. He needs consequences, he shouted. Mia screamed upstairs. Noah pushed himself up, dazed, blood already forming near his lip. Dad, stop! Mark turned on him with pure fury. You embarrassed me! And then he hit him. Once. Then again. Everything blurred after that. I threw myself at Mark, screaming his name, trying to pull him away while Noah curled defensively against the couch. Mark shoved me so hard, pain exploded through my side as I crashed into the dining table. Mia was crying hysterically upstairs. Call 911! I screamed. My vision swam. Mark kept yelling slurs at Noah, words so vicious I physically cannot forget them. Every sentence sounded uglier than the last. You ruined this family. This is your fault. You made your mother hate me." Noah was sobbing now. Not loud sobbing. The terrible kind where someone is trying not to cry while they're being hurt. I crawled back toward them, despite the stabbing pain in my ribs. Mark raised his hand again. I grabbed him around the waist with every ounce of strength I had. "Get away from him!" He elbowed me hard. Something cracked inside my chest. White-hot pain shot through me so violently I nearly blacked out. Then suddenly, sirens. Mia had done it. Thank God. Mark froze just long enough for Noah to scramble behind me. I pulled him against my side protectively while trying to breathe through the agony spreading across my ribs. The police burst through the front door minutes later. Everything after that felt unreal. Officers shouting commands, Mia crying on the stairs, Mark insisting we were overreacting, Noah shaking uncontrollably beside me with blood on his mouth and swelling already forming around one eye. One officer separated Mark, while another knelt beside us. "Ma'am, are you injured?" I looked at Noah first. Always Noah first. "My son," I whispered. "Please check my son." The paramedics arrived quickly after that. When they examined Noah, I had to look away at one point, because seeing fingerprints already darkening on his skin made me nauseous. Mark kept trying to defend himself. "He provoked me. He's confused. You don't understand what he's become." I will never forget the look one of the officers gave him after that. Pure disgust. Mia clung to me while they handcuffed him. "Mom," she cried. "What's happening?" I kissed the top of her head, even though tears were running down my own face. "It's okay," I lied. But nothing was okay. As they led Mark outside, he twisted around toward us, toward Noah specifically. And even then, even after the blood, the screaming, the terror he caused, his expression held no remorse, only blame. The front door closed behind him. Silence crashed over the house. Noah suddenly broke. He buried his face into my shoulder and sobbed so hard his entire body shook. I held him despite the agony in my ribs. "I'm sorry," he kept crying. "I'm sorry." "No," I whispered fiercely. "Never apologize for this. Never." At the hospital, they confirmed Noah did not have a concussion, thank God, though he had bruising, a split lip, and a black eye forming. I had a fractured rib. The doctor asked how it happened. I said, "My boyfriend attacked our son." Even speaking the sentence out loud felt surreal. Hours later, while Noah slept in the hospital chair beside me, and Mia curled beneath a blanket nearby, I opened my phone and stared at the attorney's email address. Then I typed 4 words. I want full custody. I hit send before fear could stop me. And sitting there, in the sterile hospital light, listening to my children breathe beside me, I understood something horrifying. The man I loved was gone long before tonight. I had just finally seen the truth clearly enough to stop defending him. The house no longer felt like ours after that night. Even after the police tape disappeared. Even after the blood was cleaned from the hardwood floor. Even after Mia stopped jumping every time the doorbell rang. Something permanent had cracked open inside those walls. 3 days after the hospital, I stood in the driveway while a security company installed cameras around the property. I watched the technician drill metal brackets into the corners of the house, while Noah sat silently on the porch swing, wrapped in one of my oversized hoodies, despite the warm weather. He barely spoke anymore. That frightened me more than the bruises. Mia had returned to school quickly, almost aggressively normal. She talked too much at dinner, laughed too loudly at television shows, and insisted she was fine every time I asked. But Noah moved through the house like someone expecting danger to reappear at any moment. And honestly, so did I. I slept maybe 2 hours a night. Every sound outside jolted me awake. I checked the locks obsessively. I reread the emergency custody paperwork so many times I nearly memorized it. The judge had granted me temporary full custody within 48 hours. When my lawyer called to tell me, I sat on the kitchen floor and cried so hard I scared Mia. "It's okay," I kept telling her through tears. "These are good tears." Mostly because, for the first time since all this began, I believed Mark could not legally take Noah anywhere. No secret camps. No forced programs. No disappearing my son while I was at work. My lawyer, Diane Harper, was a sharp woman in her 50s who spoke calmly even when discussing horrifying things. During our second meeting, she spread folders across her desk and looked directly at me. "Avery, you need to document everything." "I already took photos." "Good. Keep doing it." So I did. I photographed Noah's bruises as they darkened from purple to yellow. I documented my fractured rib diagnosis. I saved screenshots of old text messages from Mark complaining that Noah was embarrassing the family. I wrote timelines, dates, conversations. Every piece of evidence felt like another nail sealing the coffin of the life we used to have. And somehow, that hurt. Not because I wanted Mark back, but because I realized the man I thought I knew may never have existed at all. A week after the arrest, Child Protective Services came to interview the kids. I was terrified beforehand. I imagined strangers judging us, questioning Noah harshly, re-traumatizing him. Instead, the social worker assigned to our case was gentle. Her name was Elena, and she spoke to Noah like he mattered. Really mattered. Not like a problem to solve. Afterward, Noah sat quietly beside me in the car. "She believed me," he whispered. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Of course she did." He stared out the window. "Dad always said nobody would." That sentence haunted me for days. At school, things became complicated quickly. Noah was not publicly out to most people yet, and we wanted to protect his privacy. I met personally with the principal, the guidance counselor, and every one of his teachers. "No one but me picks him up," I said firmly. "Not grandparents. Not family friends. Certainly not Mark." The administration took it seriously, thankfully. My boss did too. I will forever be grateful for that woman. When I explained the situation through embarrassed tears in her office, she immediately approved remote work flexibility and told me to focus on my family. "You're doing the right thing," she said. I clung to those words harder than she probably realized. Because late at night, doubt still came. Not about protecting Noah. Never that. But about how I missed the warning signs for so long. I kept replaying old memories differently now. The jokes Mark made that I brushed off. The tension whenever Noah talked about certain classmates. The way Mark would leave the room if a gay character appeared on television. I had mistaken avoidance for discomfort. But it had been resentment growing quietly in the dark. One afternoon, Mia wandered into the kitchen while I was organizing legal paperwork. "Are you divorcing Dad?" Children always ask the hardest questions when you're least prepared. I closed the folder slowly. "Yes." She looked down at the floor. "Good." The word stunned me. "Mia." He scared me. Her voice cracked instantly. That brave little performance she'd been putting on for days shattered right there in front of me. "He looked like he hated Noah," she whispered. I pulled her into my arms immediately. "He doesn't hate you," I said softly. "But he hurt him." I had no answer for that. Because she was right. That night, after both kids went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by silence and legal documents. The charges against Mark were overwhelming. Assault. Domestic violence. Child abuse, both physical and emotional. Endangerment. And because of the language he used during the attack, a hate-related enhancement. Every time I read the list, my stomach twisted. This wasn't some stranger. This was the man who once painted Mia's nursery pale yellow because he said bright colors gave him headaches. How could both versions exist in the same person? A few days later, Diane called again. "Avery," she said carefully, "there's something else." My chest tightened instantly. "What?" Mark's attorney reached out. I stood up so fast, the chair nearly tipped over. "What does he want?" "He's considering giving up parental rights voluntarily as part of a plea negotiation." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Giving up parental rights. Just like that. Noah walked into the kitchen halfway through the call, probably noticing the expression on my face. I ended the conversation quickly. "What happened?" he asked nervously. I hesitated. Then I told him. Noah stood perfectly still, and for one awful second, I thought he might cry again. Instead, he just nodded slowly. "Okay. That's all you have to say?" His eyes looked older than 16 suddenly. "If he doesn't want me," he said quietly, I can't make him. The ache that tore through me then was indescribable. I crossed the room immediately and grabbed his face gently. "Listen to me very carefully," I said. "What your father did says everything about him and nothing about you." His lip trembled. "You are not difficult to love, Noah." That broke him. He started crying silently while I held him against my chest. And underneath my grief, underneath my rage, another emotion began forming. Hatred. Not wild hatred. Cold hatred. The kind born from watching someone wound your child and then abandon him emotionally afterward. Weeks passed. Slowly, the house began breathing again. Friends came over often. My sister brought casseroles we barely ate. My cousin installed stronger outdoor lights. People called constantly to check on us. Some relatives disappeared entirely. A few from my side of the family believed Mark had overreacted, but still had understandable concerns. I blocked those people immediately. Noah heard enough hatred from his father. He would not hear it disguised as family loyalty, too. Therapy started shortly afterward. Mia hated it instantly. "It's boring," she declared after 3 sessions. "I already talked about my feelings." Honestly, the stubbornness almost made me laugh for the first time in weeks. Noah's experience was different. He connected deeply with his therapist, a patient man named Dr. Keller, who specialized in trauma and LGBTQ teens. Some sessions were private, some included me. During one joint session, Dr. Keller asked Noah what hurt most about everything. I expected him to say the violence, the slurs, the fear. Instead, Noah looked down at his hands and whispered, "I kept hoping he'd choose me. I don't think I'll ever recover from hearing that." A month later, Diane called with another update. "The plea deal is moving quickly." Apparently, Mark's attorney knew the evidence against him was devastating. Hospital records. Photographs. Mia's 911 call. Noah's testimony. Mine. Even neighbors had heard screaming. Diane believed the judge would almost certainly grant permanent full custody. After we hung up, I walked into the backyard where Noah sat sketching quietly in the fading sunlight. For the first time in weeks, he looked peaceful. Just a little. I sat beside him carefully because my ribs still ached sometimes. "You okay?" I asked. He shrugged. Then, after a second, he leaned his head lightly against my shoulder. Such a tiny gesture. But it nearly made me cry. Because despite everything Mark had done, despite all the damage, my son was still capable of softness. Still capable of trust. And right then, watching the evening light settle across our backyard, while Mia argued with her friends online through the open window, I realized something important. We were no longer waiting for our family to survive. We already had. It has been almost 8 months since the night Mark destroyed our family in the living room. Some days it feels like 8 years. Other days I still wake up expecting to hear his truck in the driveway. The divorce itself is still dragging through paperwork and signatures, but the most important parts are over now. The custody battle ended faster than anyone expected. Mark surrendered his parental rights to both Noah and Mia during the plea negotiations. I remember sitting in the courtroom when his attorney announced it. Noah went completely still beside me. Mia stared at the floor. And I felt relief so sharp it almost resembled grief. Because even after everything, some broken part of me had still hoped Mark would look at our children and fight for them. Instead, he let go. Just like that. The judge granted me full custody permanently. Noah and I also received restraining orders against Mark. My lawyer fought hard for Mia to receive one too, but because Mark had never physically struck her, the judge refused. Diane was furious afterward. "She witnessed domestic violence," she snapped while we stood outside the courtroom. "She's a child. The emotional impact alone should qualify." But the judge's decision stood. Even now, it still makes me uneasy. Thankfully, Mark accepted the restrictions without argument. Or maybe he simply stopped caring. I honestly don't know which possibility hurts more. As part of the plea deal, he was convicted of assault, domestic violence, child abuse, emotional harm, and a hate-related offense connected to the attack on Noah. He received 1 year and 10 months in prison, with the possibility of early release for good behavior, followed by mandatory community service. When I first heard the sentence, anger flooded me so intensely I thought I might scream. 1 year and 10 months. For breaking Noah's trust forever. For turning our home into a place of fear. For fracturing my ribs. For making my son flinch whenever someone raises their voice. It did not feel like enough. Not even close. But Diane warned me early on that plea agreements often move quickly when the evidence is overwhelming. And the evidence against Mark had been catastrophic. Medical records, witness testimony, CPS reports, photos. The 911 recording from Mia sobbing into the phone while begging for help. Sometimes I still hear that recording in my nightmares. The strangest part is how quiet life became afterward. Trauma tricks people into believing healing will arrive dramatically. That one day music will swell and suddenly everything will feel whole again. It doesn't happen that way. Healing arrives quietly, in small, ordinary moments. Like Noah laughing unexpectedly at dinner for the first time in months. Or Mia falling asleep on the couch with her head in my lap because she finally feels safe enough to rest deeply again. Or realizing nobody checks the locks 5 times before bed anymore. Noah still attends therapy twice a week, sometimes alone, sometimes with me. Dr. Keller has helped him more than I can ever explain. One evening after a session, Noah sat beside me in the car while rain tapped softly against the windshield. "I think Dad hated himself," he said suddenly. I turned toward him carefully. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged weakly. "Nobody gets that angry over something unless it scares them." The maturity in that sentence shattered my heart. 16-year-olds should worry about exams and crushes and curfews, not trying to psychologically dissect the parent who traumatized them. I reached over and squeezed his hand. "You don't have to understand him, to move on from him." Noah nodded slowly, though I'm not sure either of us fully believed it yet. He still struggles sometimes. Loud arguments on television make him tense instantly. He apologizes too much. And there are moments when I catch him studying people carefully before speaking, like he's still trying to predict danger before it arrives. But he smiles more now. Real smiles. Not the exhausted fake ones he wore during those terrible months under Mark's pressure. And recently, there's been a boy. I only know bits and pieces because Noah guards his privacy like a dragon protecting treasure. But apparently, there's someone at school he likes. A quiet boy from orchestra with messy brown hair and an obsession with old video games. The first time Noah mentioned him casually at dinner, he looked terrified afterward, like he expected judgment. Instead, I simply asked, "Does he make you happy?" Noah blinked at me, then he smiled. "Yeah," he admitted softly. That smile alone was worth every court hearing, every sleepless night, every painful decision. Mia, meanwhile, insists she's completely over everything, which is obviously not true. But she's healing in her own way. She returned to soccer. She redecorated her bedroom bright green. And she has become ferociously protective of Noah. Last month, someone at school made a cruel joke about him. Mia apparently dumped chocolate milk on the boy's backpack. When the principal called me, I tried very hard to sound responsible. I failed. "You're laughing," the principal said. "I'm sorry," I replied. Absolutely not sorry at all. Even our house feels different now. Warmer. Lighter. For a while after Mark's arrest, every room carried ghosts. But slowly, the kids reclaimed the space. Noah plays music loudly again while cooking. Mia leaves blankets everywhere. Friends come over constantly. Life returned in messy little pieces. As for me, I'm still learning who I am outside survival mode. For months, my entire existence revolved around protecting my children from immediate danger. Courtrooms, lawyers, therapists, security cameras, police reports. Now that the crisis has passed, exhaustion finally catches me sometimes. There are nights I sit alone in the kitchen and cry silently over the version of Mark I thought existed. Not because I want him back, never that. But because mourning someone who is still alive is a uniquely terrible kind of grief. I mourn the father Noah deserved. I mourn the future Mia thought she would have. I mourn the woman I used to be before I learned how quickly love can become something frightening. But I also feel proud. Proud that I listened when something felt wrong. Proud that I chose my children over comfort. Proud that Noah knows, without question now, that he never has to earn my love by becoming someone else. A few weeks ago, Noah asked me something while we were grocery shopping. "Mom?" "Yeah?" "Do you think things would have been different if I never told Dad?" I stopped pushing the cart immediately. "Noah, He looked nervous instantly, like he regretted asking. I took his face gently in my hands right there between the cereal aisle and frozen foods. You did nothing wrong by telling the truth about who you are. But... No! My voice broke. Listen to me. The only person responsible for what happened is your father. His eyes watered. I just keep thinking, maybe I ruined everything. I pulled him into a hug before he could finish. No, I whispered fiercely against his hair. You revealed everything. That's different. And I meant it. Because families don't fall apart when children tell the truth. Families fall apart when love becomes conditional. Tonight, Noah and Mia are sprawled across the living room floor, yelling at each other over Mario Kart, while pizza boxes clutter the coffee table. Mia accuses Noah of cheating every 5 minutes. Noah claims she's just dramatic. Their laughter fills the house so loudly that I can hear it all the way from the kitchen. For a moment, I just stand there, listening. This ordinary noise, this safety, this peace. There was a time I almost sacrificed it to preserve the illusion of a complete family. Thank God I didn't. Sometimes Noah still catches me watching him carefully. Tonight he glances toward the kitchen and raises an eyebrow. What? I smile softly. Nothing. But really, it's everything. Because my son is alive. He is healing. He is loved exactly as he is. And after everything we survived, that feels like the closest thing to a miracle I will ever know.